Most people think you need hundreds of thousands of dollars to make money from property, and you don't. I personally make over $150,000 a year from properties that I don't own. My business partner and I run a combined portfolio of 14 properties, generating over $1.4 million in revenue. We own none of these properties, and it's called co-living arbitrage. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this works step by step. I'm also going to break down actual numbers on one of my properties, what I pay in rent, what each room earns, and the exact weekly profit, so you can see this isn't theory, this is real. All right, let's get into it. Co-living arbitrage, the property cash flow mechanism fully explained. How to make real money from properties you don't own, step by step with real numbers. What we're going to do in this video is I'm going to show you one of my live deals so you can see two examples, what's active and live on the market and a secured example. So let's get stuck in. Just jumping straight into the proof. This isn't theory or a handful of screenshots. This is a strategy that we've been running since 2017 and the same system our students are using to build their own numbers. So first off, personal annual income is $150,000. This is generated from the properties that I utilize with the co-living strategies. Combined with my business partner, we have $1.4 million in gross revenue coming in. That's combined across our portfolios. In there, we've got 14 live deals. We've been operating since 2017. That's over 9 years of proven execution. And just a handful of my students, including Ian. Ian is in Sydney and he runs his own property interstate. His deal is in WA and it makes $28,000 a year in passive income using our hybrid management system. Then we have Josh, who makes $40,000 a year and he's even based in South Australia. His deal is here in WA. Amy, of course, makes $31,200 a year and started from scratch. And Jared runs half a dozen of these properties in Victoria. So this can be done in any state. So what actually is co-living arbitrage? The mechanism is genuinely simple once you see it laid out clearly. Here's exactly how it works. You sign a lease on the property as a tenant. Your company can do this. Your company signs a lease on a property as the tenant. You pay a fixed weekly rate directly to the landlord or the agent. You set the property up as quality, professionally managed co-living accommodation, then lease out each room individually to working professionals. The gap between what you pay the landlord and what you collect from your room tenants, that's your cash flow. Here's a real example. Head lease cost to the landlord $730 a week. 5 rooms times $300 a week, that's $1,500 a week in profit. Your gross profit is $770 a week. Utilities work out to be around $450 a month, and insurance is around $250 a month. That's about $161 a week. Your net weekly profit is $608 a week, and your net annual profit sits at just over $31,000 a year. You do not own the property, you control the asset. You manage the yield and never carry the debt. I'll show you this live example here now. So here's this exact property here. We've got 176 Beachside Parade, Yanchep. We'll click on this one. It's a 5x2, $730 a week. This property example is in Yanchep, Western Australia. We validate the average room rent in Yanchep. That's $293. That's without bills. And then we've got a ratio of 3 to 1 people looking. We can see at the moment there are 16 people looking to rent a room in Yanchep. These people are at $400, $350, $400 a week. And so what we want to do here is we want to punch all of this into our profit calculator. So we can see there's proven data demand. We can see that there's proven average room rates, and we can see comparables down here for $300, $330 a week. So what we want to do then is validate this room and see how much profit this property would actually make. So if we take this property at $300 for 5 rooms, bills included, and we are paying our landlord $730 a week, and our setup cost is around $6,000 for furniture. Our bond is going to be just under $3,000, which means we are getting into this property for around $9,000. What this means is, from a cash flow perspective, running at a 98% occupancy, we are actually going to be making $30,000 a year from this property. And that's taking into consideration utilities and insurance as well. It's going to take 3 months to break even on this specific property. That's getting your bond and your setup cost paid back. So that is how one of these properties stacks in a very simple way. There's no additional rooms that you need to build. There's nothing like that. You're just furnishing this property, taking photos, and you are making sure it's compliant and listing it on the open market. That is exactly how you can make $30,000 a year from a property that that you do not own. Now I'll show you exactly one of my deals here. This property here is in Western Australia also. It's a fantastic location and a great property. This is in a location called Floria. We can see we've got 11 people looking for one room offered. Average room rent is $350 per week. The actual numbers on this property is this is a 6-bedroom asset. We have the first bedroom at $449, then we have 1, 2, 3 at $375, and then 2 at $350. Our rent to the landlord is $1,300 and our setup cost is $8,000, including bond $5,200 additionally. What we can see here is this is running at a 98% occupancy based on our historical data. This property here alone, with utilities insurance taken out as well, was 4 months to break even, and our annual cash flow on this property makes $41,000 a year, or $3,422 a month in net profit. So that's exactly how 2 deals work. The first I showed you is a live example, and the second is a secured example, one of my own properties. And this is just one property making $41,000 a year. You don't own the property, you control the asset. You manage the yield and never carry the debt. Why this works so well right now? There are 3 main forces that are all converging in the Australian market that makes this one of the best windows of opportunity seen in years. Vacancy rates are near zero. Landlords are exhausted dealing with vacancy risk, difficult tenants, and maintenance headaches. When you offer guaranteed rent and a long-term lease, most people jump at it. You solve their problem the moment you walk in the door. Room demand is strong and undersupplied. FIFO workers, healthcare staff, young professionals, people who want a clean, well-located room, not a whole house they can't afford and don't need. The demand is structural and growing. The margin per property is real. Individual rooms are renting for $320 to $480 per week. Multiply that across 4 to 6 rooms and your income is significantly higher than what a landlord earns on a single family tenancy, which is exactly why they're open to working with you. Now, one thing to mention, this works in every single state, but the rules change. Co-living arbitrage can be done anywhere in Australia, but zoning, subletting permissions, and what counts as compliant accommodation all shift depending on where you are. If you get this wrong, you operate in the wrong state without understanding local compliance, you're exposed, legally and financially. The most common mistake beginners make is assuming the rules are the same everywhere, and that's just not the case. But if you get it right, with the right compliance frameworks, you can run properties in states you don't even live in. That's when this becomes genuinely passive, real income from properties you don't own, in a market you're not even standing in. Our clients at Property Cashflow Institute do this every single day. Interstate is optional, of course. It's one of the most powerful and most overlooked aspects of this model, and most people have never even considered it before. So here's a closer look at the numbers. Let's be blunt about cost, because you should know this before any call, not be surprised on it. The startup cost per property ranges from $15,000 to $25,000. This covers furniture and fit out, bond and advance rent to the landlord, and of course your insurance, utility connections, and initial marketing. Now, if you compare that to a 6-figure deposit on an investment property, the accessibility gap is obvious. In this table, we can see the difference between having less rooms and more rooms and how much cash flow gets impacted by that count. In this scenario, we've got conservative, mid-range, and strong. In conservative, you can have 4 rooms. Your net weekly income sits at about $480. That works out to be around $25,000 a year. Mid-range, which is where we like to target at 5 rooms, your net per week looks to be about $700 per week. That's $36,000 per year. And a strong cash flowing property is something that can generate close to that $900 to $1,000 a week in profit. That's going to be around $53,000 net per year. Even on the conservative end, that's a 50% annual return on capital invested. And most operators recover their setup costs within 6 months of cash flow. So here's where we get real with the risks and how they're managed. This is a real business, not a loophole. Here's an honest breakdown of the risks and the systematic ways that we handle it. Firstly, we've got vacancy risk. This is mitigated by choosing a high demand location. Just like everything, location is key with property. We then look at our pricing and our apple-to-apple comparison when we're looking at the different rooms. We also like to hold buffer funds available for anything unforeseen. Of course, we have tenant risk as well, mitigated through proper screening, written agreements, and bonds built into every individual room tenancy from day one. The landlord risk, mitigated with a written head lease that has a genuine minimum term and an early termination clause, protecting your setup investment if the landlord wants the property back. And of course, the compliance risk. This is the one that beginners get wrong the most. Written sublet permission must be in the head lease. Council zoning needs checking. Proper insurance is mandatory. This has to be run as a registered compliant business from day one. We're not looking for workarounds. None of these risks disappear. They get managed systematically, the same way any experienced operator manages risk in any business. So let's look at how scaling works. One property proves the model. The compounding happens when you scale it properly and consistently. Here's the realistic shape of growth when it's done right. Property 1 is a proof of concept, stabilized and cash flowing at around $450 a week net. You've learned the system, you've built the agent relationships, and you prove that it works in your market. Property 2 is the confidence phase. This is added once you have confidence in systems, now running at around $900 a week combined. That's around $47,000 a year. Deal flow gets easier, and agents know that you deliver. Property 3 is where systems are dialed in. You move faster this time, around $1,300 a week. That's $70,000 a year. The playbook is repeatable and the margin is real. And of course, property 4 is where you hire and leverage different systems. Often the point people bring on a part-time helper, around $1,800 a week or around $94,000 a year. The business starts running more independently. This is where it gets genuinely passive. So here's exactly what we're going to be covering on your call. The mechanism is clear. Now let's make it specific to you. On your strategy call, because you've already seen this video, we will go straight into your specific situation, your target area, what a realistic first property model looks like for you, and what it would actually cost you to start, and whether this is genuinely the right fit before you commit to anything. Your target area will assess demand, vacancy rates, and room pricing in a market. We'll show you examples of a targeted area. We'll assess demand, vacancy rates, and room pricing. First property model, a realistic projection built around your capital, your situation, and where you want to go. Your startup costs, exactly what it would cost you to get into your first property and have it live and cash flowing. And of course, is this the right fit for you? An honest assessment. There's no pressure. The call is there to give you absolute clarity. Now that being said, I'm looking forward to speaking with you further.